It's a new tactic in the increasingly urgent battle against climate change. Here's Ben Tracy.
If climate change were a disaster film, it would likely be accused of being too over the top. Wildfires reducing entire towns to ashes, hurricanes swamping cities, droughts draining lakes and withering fields, and raging oceans redrawing the very maps of our coasts. And now many cities and states are asking, who's going to pay for all of this?
This is real. We're on the front line of climate change right here in Charleston.
John Tecklenburg is the mayor of Charleston, South Carolina. The city's been battered by an endless parade of floods due to sea level rise. Some desperate homeowners have resorted to raising their homes by several feet.
In the next 50 years, we'll see another 2 to 3 feet of sea level rise. The water is our greatest asset. It's also become our biggest challenge.
So the city is raising large parts of its existing seawall. And the Army Corps of Engineers says Charleston should build another 8 miles of wall. The city expects an estimated $3 billion in climate change-related costs.
Can you raise taxes high enough to cover these costs?
It's like any big project. You gotta look under every rock.
Underneath one of those rocks are the fossil fuel companies, whose carbon emissions from oil, coal, and gas, study after study has shown, are major contributors to climate change. Charleston is one of more than 24 cities, counties, and states that are suing these companies, including ExxonMobil, Shell, Chevron, BP, and ConocoPhillips.
I feel if you contributed to the problem, that you should contribute to the solution.
So in some ways, it is a bit of a money grab.
Well, to the extent that they participated in what created this need, it's a money grab because there's some responsibility for what happened.
The suits are modeled after the big tobacco cases of the 1990s.
This innocent-looking product kills.
And accuse the companies and industry groups of making false and misleading claims about climate change.
I'm suing ExxonMobil because they lied to us.
No court's going to have a hard time understanding that.
William Tong is Attorney General of Connecticut. He's suing ExxonMobil under the state's consumer protection laws. He says internal company research done by Exxon and Mobil, which used to be separate companies, shows they were aware of the dangers of climate change since at least the 1980s.
There's a study from, I think, 1982 in which they produce a chart that shows as the levels of carbon dioxide rise, the temperature of our atmosphere will rise. And that chart is almost exactly right.
And the suit also cites this 1988 internal draft memo from an Exxon spokesperson, advising the company emphasize the uncertainty of climate science.
This is a strategy document from ExxonMobil that basically says, let's lie. Let's say the science is not clear. Let's downplay the fact of climate change.
Tong points to ads that look like editorials from ExxonMobil, as well as executives' own words.
But scientific evidence remains inconclusive as to whether human activities affect the global climate.
Some of these internal memos from the company acknowledge uncertainty about this. Does that strengthen the company's argument that this was not settled science?
No, it doesn't, because the fact is that they knew with a fair degree of certainty that there could be serious catastrophic effects from the continued use of fossil fuels. The fact that scientists have questions about their data is unremarkable. That's what scientists do.
So your argument is even if they didn't know everything, they knew enough.
That's right.
ExxonMobil is named in all 24 of these lawsuits and says these claims are baseless and without merit. In total, the cases accuse more than 40 fossil fuel companies of a disinformation campaign.
A doubling of the CO2 content of the atmosphere will produce a tremendous greening of planet Earth.
Some point to this video, backed primarily by the coal industry, promoting the benefits of pumping more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere.
As more and more scientists are confirming, our world is deficient in carbon dioxide.
We reached out to several of the companies. Some responded, writing they are working to combat climate change. In addition, ExxonMobil and Shell said these lawsuits do nothing to advance that goal.
Fighting climate change requires policymaking, not lawsuits.
Phil Goldberg is an attorney with the Manufacturers Accountability Project, a group helping the fossil fuel industry push back against these lawsuits.
The attorneys in some of these cases, though, would say that what they're doing is trying to hold these companies liable for deception. Is that fair?
So, Ben, this is not an issue of who knew what or when or who said what and when. The federal government has had the very same information that they're saying that the energy companies had going back in the 1960s and 70s and 80s. The question is what we're going to do about it today.
The scope of the problem is one that requires really a national approach.
Richard Lazarus teaches environmental law at Harvard.
Cities and counties and states are being the ones left with the problem when the federal government doesn't step up to the plate.
He says even if the cities and states prove the fossil fuel companies deceive the public about climate change, it doesn't necessarily mean they'll win.
They've done a really good job of showing that the oil and gas industry, I think, engaged in fraudulent activity. The challenge will be causation, to prove that their fraudulent behavior is what prevented the United States from passing the laws we needed to reduce those greenhouse gas emissions.
So far, the industry has filed a series of motions slowing down the cases. Charleston, South Carolina is bracing for a long and uncertain legal battle.
So if you're not successful with this lawsuit, what does that mean for what you're trying to do here?
We're going to find a way to fund the improvements that we need.
But I bet you've heard the phrase, hope is not a strategy.
Hope springs eternal, right?
But in the meantime, the water keeps rising.